April the 19th, 1995 was a day that forever changed Oklahoma City and left a mark on American history. For it was on this date that downtown Oklahoma City, capital of Oklahoma, would see an explosion that destroyed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, taking the lives of over 100 people in the process. The magnitude of this tragic act shocked the nation and tested the resilience of the local community. Today, we find out just what happened, as well as what now remains of Oklahoma City's lost federal building. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. Let's go back to March the 2nd, 1977, when a new structure was inaugurated in Oklahoma City. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, this 9-story concrete and granite building, was named after Alfred P. Murrah, a highly respected federal judge and native of Oklahoma. The building hosted 17 federal agencies, including the Social Security Administration, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. But the building also featured other things like a daycare center, a cafeteria, and a credit union for federal employees. Hence, on a daily basis in the early 1990s, approximately 450 people worked in the building. With that in mind, before the tragedy on April the 19th, 1995, Oklahoma City was already going through very tough times. The city had been severely impacted by the economic crisis of the 1980s, meaning that the work offered by the various agencies in the federal building was more important than ever for the community. This crisis triggered a significant economic downturn with massive job losses severely affecting the local economy. Disinvestment and depopulation became evident problems as many businesses closed or relocated, leaving large areas of downtown vacant and deteriorated. By the early 1990s, downtown Oklahoma City's landscape was bleak. Abandoned and dilapidated buildings were standard. However, despite these challenges, there was a concerted effort to revitalize the city. In 1993, under the then leadership of Mayor Ron Norick, a series of initiatives known as the Metropolitan Area Projects, or MAPS, was launched. This plan developed an alliance of city and county officials, as well as business leaders, who were all focused on improving the city's cultural and recreational facilities. The MAPS committee proposed a 1-cent sales tax increase meant to fund 9 major projects that would transform the downtown area. These projects, including building new sports facilities, improving the waterfront, as well as other park spaces. The hope was that these investments would revitalize the physical area and attract new businesses as well as city assets, breathing new life into a city struggling to regain its former glory. Despite these efforts, however, recovery was slow, and the downtown area continued to decline. And it was in this context that the devastating attack on the federal building occurred. On the morning of April the 19th, 1995, at 9:02 a.m., a devastating explosion rocked downtown Oklahoma City. A Ryder truck loaded with a potent fertilizer and fuel bomb exploded in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, destroying much of the structure, killing 168 people, including 19 children. Immediately after the explosion, the scene in the city was one of chaos and desperation. Emergency and rescue teams arrived quickly, working tirelessly to save survivors trapped in the rubble. Meanwhile, the FBI launched a large-scale investigation to identify those responsible for the attack. One of the critical clues was the discovery of the vehicle identification number on the rear axle of the Ryder truck used in the attack. This finding allowed investigators to trace the truck to a rental agency in Junction City, Kansas. Then, with this hot lead in hand, on April the 20th, FBI agents visited Elliott's body shop, where the truck had been rented. The owner recalled that a man using a fake name, Bob Clean, had rented the car 2 days before the bombing. With this information on hand, the agents created a sketch of the suspect, which was widely distributed. That same day, several witnesses in Junction City identified the man in the sketch as Timothy McVeigh, who had been staying in the nearby Dreamland Motel. McVeigh, a U.S. Army veteran, carried out the attack due to his personal and twisted beliefs against the federal government. As it turns out, the suspect drove the truck to Dreamland Motel in Junction City on April the 17th, where he would spend the night. In the days leading up to the bombing, he made preparations for the attack, until finally, in the early morning of April the 19th, McVeigh left the motel around 4:30 a.m., driving towards Oklahoma City. Then, at 8:57 a.m., he parked the truck in front of the Federal Building and lit the fuse. He walked away swiftly towards a getaway car he had previously prepared. Just 5 minutes later, at 9:02 a.m., the bomb exploded. The blast was so intense that it destroyed the entire north facade of the building, causing massive damage within a 10-block radius. Immediately after the explosion, rescue teams mobilized and searched for survivors among the rubble. McVeigh was arrested just 90 minutes after the explosion by Oklahoma Highway Patrol Officer Charlie Hanger for driving without a license plate and illegally carrying a firearm. But another detail stood out, as at the time of his arrest, he wore a t-shirt with an anti-government slogan in Latin, which translated to "thus always to tyrants." The phrase is historically associated with the assassination of tyrants and is formally linked to John Wilkes Booth, who shouted it after assassinating President Lincoln. Anyhow, McVeigh's arrest quickly became a focal point of the investigation. Forensic evidence found explosive residues on his clothing, and his military background and connections to anti-government extremist groups provided a clear motivation. Additional information from records at Terry Nichols' farm in Kansas, where the bomb had been prepared, further strengthened the case against him. McVeigh's motivation was explained during his trial in various interviews, where he expressed his anger and frustration towards the federal government, accusing it of abusing power and violating citizen rights. In other words, this terrorist act was an attempt to draw attention to those grievances and inspire a revolution against what he saw as an unjust government. On April the 21st, he was formally charged with participating in the bombing. His accomplice, Terry Nichols, surrendered to authorities the same day after learning of McVeigh's arrest. Nichols was also charged with helping to plan and execute this heinous attack. In the following months, both men were prosecuted and brought to trial for one of the deadliest acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. Fortunately, they were sentenced to death. On the day of sentencing, a steady stream of visitors stopped at the site of the Federal Building, where a fence had become a shrine for the victims. Teddy bear shirts, t-shirts, and license plates adorned the walls in tribute to the dead. Survivors praised the jury for the verdict. Glenda Riley, who survived the explosion that killed so many of her co-workers, expressed that although it was challenging to wish death upon someone, McVeigh had exhausted his time and space on Earth. Jack Walker and Sharon Medeiros also supported the sentence, considering it to be the least that McVeigh deserved, as he had forfeited his right to live by killing so many people. Don DeArmond viewed the verdict as a clear message that such behavior would not be tolerated. Even Bud Welch, an opponent of the death penalty whose daughter died in the explosion, accepted the verdict because the jury simply followed the law, though morally, he still disagreed with it. Overall, while the verdict did not completely heal the wounds, many survivors found a certain degree of solace and justice in the jury's decision. After the bombing on April the 19th, 1995, the devastation at the site of the Federal Building was overwhelming. Debris cleanup began immediately after the conclusion of rescue operations, with emergency teams and volunteers working tirelessly for weeks to clear the remnants of the building. The surrounding buildings were also significantly affected, such as the Regency Tower apartment building, where nearly 400 residents were left homeless, although they were allowed to briefly return to their property so that they could collect essential items under police escort. You see, authorities had not yet determined the full extent of the damage, so the entire area was under investigation. Then, on April the 23rd, 1995, the remaining parts of the Federal Building were demolished in a controlled manner. The debris was carefully removed, and some was used as evidence in the trial of Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. In 1997, plans for the Oklahoma City National Memorial began, with the mission to honor the victims, survivors, and those affected by the bombing. The memorial was dedicated on April the 19th, 2000, exactly 5 years after the attack. The Oklahoma City National Memorial includes several poignant and symbolic features. Where the building once stood, there are now 168 empty bronze and glass chairs, each representing a life lost. These chairs are arranged in rows on a grassy field, with 19 smaller ones representing the children who died in the bombing. Each chair is illuminated at night, symbolizing hope, even in darkness. Another notable feature is the reflecting pool, which runs along the site where the street separating the building from the Ryder truck parking area once was. Flanked by two walls called the Gates of Time, the pool invites reflection and contemplation, marking the moments before and after the explosion. The inscription on these walls indicate 901 and 903, representing the moments immediately before and after the detonation. Finally, there is the survivor tree, an American elm that survived the explosion, becoming a central symbol of this memorial. This tree, showcasing resilience and the ability to recover, serves as something of a gathering place, a symbol of hope for visitors. Around the tree, new generations of elms were planted, ensuring that the legacy of the survivor tree endures. The Memorial Museum provides a detailed narrative of the events on April 19, 1995, as well as the impact and aftermath of the bombing. It displays personal items, testimonies, and artifacts that tell the story of the tragedy and the community's response. The creation of the Oklahoma City National Memorial not only commemorated the victims, but educated future generations, gestures that, in my opinion, symbolize the city's resilient spirit. But what's happened in Oklahoma City since then, and has it continued its path to recovery? The explosion caused profound damage to the downtown area, affecting 39 blocks of the North District and leaving 12 completely vacant. In search of a solution, by July of '95, just 2 months after the bombing, a workshop sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts was organized. The goal was to design a long-term plan to rebuild the downtown area. The workshop brought together architects, urban planners, and community leaders to transform the devastated area into a vibrant and functional center. The resulting plan not only focused on the bombing site, but also promoted investments in nearby neighborhoods, which in some cases preserved the preservation or even reuse of existing buildings. Moreover, after this bombing, the MAPS project we discussed earlier gained a much greater significance. Sports centers, the riverfront, parks, plazas, and other public spaces were developed to foster the community and attract residents and visitors to the downtown area. Additionally, residential and commercial development was encouraged, promoting new housing construction and the opening of local businesses. As the community focused on rebuilding downtown, there was also the need for a new federal building to replace what had been lost. This project had to meet the strictest of security measures, but it also had to integrate harmoniously into the renewed urban landscape. Construction of the new Oklahoma City Federal Building began in October of 2001 and was completed by 2003. It is located just a few blocks away from the former site and covers an area of 101,000 square feet. The design of the building aimed to create a structure that combined advanced security with a welcoming and accessible appearance for the public. A combination of blast-resistant laminated glass and reinforced concrete was used to achieve this, ensuring that the building could withstand a catastrophic event without collapsing if, God forbid, that would be needed again. Glass expansions were incorporated to allow natural light to enter, while massive exterior concrete walls provided the necessary strength against potential threats. The glass-enclosed inter-courtyard, separated from the adjacent street by a distinctive colonnade, exemplifies this philosophy, simultaneously providing a sense of openness, but also security. Finally, landscape elements such as green areas were integrated, which not only met security requirements, but also enhanced the surrounding aesthetics and functionality. As construction began, agreements were made with various federal agencies that would occupy the new building. Site visits were organized during construction, allowing future tenants to familiarize themselves with the space and express their needs and concerns. The result was a building that, upon completion, reached 100% occupancy within the first 8 months and has maintained a waiting list for future tenants ever since. Undoubtedly, the bombing of Oklahoma City was a tragic event that shocked the nation and caused incalculable damage. This tragedy not only left a deep emotional scar, but also highlighted the urgent need to review and improve security measures in public buildings across the U.S. And since the bombing, Oklahoma City has undergone a remarkable transformation. Numerous urban development projects had been implemented, revitalizing the downtown area and boosting the local economy and infrastructure. For example, the creation of the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum not only honors the victims, but in a weird way, it also attracts visitors worldwide, fostering tourism as well as historical awareness. And we'll leave it there for today, but a very special thank you to our channel members for making this episode possible. I hope you'll also consider supporting the project by clicking join and subscribe. Otherwise, until next time, this is Ryan Socash signing off.